Huh?
Hmm. And that was my comic, Magical Woman, and the subject of today's video. While Magical Woman as a concept has existed for quite a while, this comic specifically I made for Kadokawa's Wordless Manga Contest earlier this year. And I've been calling it the kind of pilot chapter to the story. It would essentially be set before any of the actual plot took place, and is kind of an origin story for Magical Kitty. Magical Kitty herself does not have a real person name yet. Of course, I do kind of just want to call her Kitty as her, real first name, because I already have this concept of Gummy, who's the cat, being unimpressed by the magical girl name she chooses for herself, and I think it would be even funnier if she was like, I'm Magical Kitty now. And he just says, that's just her name with magical tacked on it. She's like, yeah, that's why I named myself that. But I don't know if I'll go through with it or give her a totally different name, because I fear having a character with the same name as myself would get confusing. You may be asking, isn't Magical Kitty just you though? And the answer is no. While she is inspired by me, she's been developed quite a bit and into her own character with her own wants and aspirations and a life of her own. So I don't consider the same as me anymore. Or even as a self-insert. Which is why I've always referred to her as Magical Kitty and not just Kitty. Which is another reason that it would be hard to just name her Kitty. Anyway, Magical Kitty's concept itself came from around back in 2011. I had this planned with two of my best friends in college. We would have created our own cartoon. I don't remember if it had a specific name or if we also just called it Magical Kitty, because I was kind of the mascot of the three of us, but it would have been about ourselves transforming into magical girls and fighting the villain, who was one of my besties, then boyfriends, now husband, who had made it daytime all the time, and we couldn't sleep because of the sun, and we all really enjoy our sleep. However, as you know, life gets in the way, and, after college ended, some of us moved apart, some of us started new parts of our lives, so we never got around to making Magical Kitty or the Magical Trio, whatever we were calling it, a real show. However, I continued to draw Magical Kitty and eventually asked them if they were alright if I just kind of took it over and made it my own story, which they were totally chill with. Now, the Magical Woman story I'm writing now, Magical Kitty is the only magical adult in it. even back then, we were barely adults ourselves, around maybe 22 at the oldest. So it's hard to say if we were really adults back then. Maybe a little older than the average magical girl, but in our heart of hearts, not that much. But since then, a lot has changed about Magical Kitty. So what I'm going to show you is my very first design of her. Now, this is old artwork. Like I said, 2011. So brace yourself for this. Ta-da! Now, interestingly, I did not reference this at all when I drew her current design. I actually just had to go digging into my computer trying to find when I drew this. I just remembered it was while I was in college. But it must have been swimming around in the back of my mind, because even though I didn't really remember what this looked like, in fact, I thought it was more yellow, and I didn't think the hair would be pink, but quite a few things came through into the final design. Specifically, her ponytails came back. This is interesting because untransformed Magical Kitty has a short, blunt bob cut and only gets her ponytails when she transforms. She also has the same style of cape dress. I genuinely do really like this style of dress, so that's not super surprising, I suppose. And this one might be more of a jacket. The original design is also off-shoulder, just like the current Magical Kitty. Now, for differences, it has some inspiration from Kogal fashion, with these floppy socks, and it's got these really cute Mary Jane shoes, which I do really like. I might end up using them for another design at some point. I don't know if you can see them, but they're little buckles, they're little paw prints. That's so cute. Now, of course, there's lots of things that changed, like the wand. The wand was definitely more of a moonstick back then, and now it's a staff more specifically. And at that time, I definitely hadn't decided on a magical companion or gummy altogether. So there was no magical animal that turned into the wand. And of course, I wasn't great at drawing different body types at the time, so she's pretty thin, while the Magical Kitty I draw now is more pear-shaped. And there are all kinds of different characters and body types throughout the story. So, how did Magical Kitty come to look the way she does now? Well, first of all, I hadn't drawn a good magical version of myself in some time when I first drew this design. It was inspired by this little doodle. I created this little tiny chibi version of myself with cat ears and cat tails and a blue dress and a big pink bow on the back. And okay, this is kind of goofy, but it was actually created for a foam background for me to put on top of my favorite character as a t-shirt. So they look like they were a big fan of me too, which is a little embarrassing thinking back on it. But I really loved this little doodle. I've used it as my PFP in a tons of places since and kept thinking back on it. And then one day, when I really wanted to incorporate this into actual magical design, I decided to go ahead with it. And I eventually just sketched it out. And that's when I created the Magical Kitty as we know today. Now, when I really got into designing her, I had wanted to create her for a feature at an art show at my alma mater, but I did not manage to finish a comic for it in time and was not chosen for that gallery. So for a while, I just had these two illustrations. However, I did still have a general story in my mind for her. So at the end of last year, either at Christmas or Thanksgiving, I was watching some videos with my family of some of my favorite YouTube creators, specifically Spilled Ink, and they were sketching out designs for comics for the contest themselves. My mom asked if I would make a comic for it. At the time, I was pretty bogged down with a bunch of backlog work that I needed to finish up, so I didn't think I would, but I ended up having more time once the new year came around, and I really wanted to work with Magical Kitty, so I went for it and created her comic, and well, there it goes. While I was working on it, I knew that I wanted her powers to come from Little Kitty Cat, and I knew that I wanted the kitty cat to transform into the staff, but at the time, her staff was literally just a little white cat, And I thought that would be a boring design, so I decided, she has stars on her staff, I'll throw one on its face. And you know what, let's throw one on his tail too. And that's how I designed Gummy. I'm sad to say he didn't have a whole lot of thought into his design from the start, but I do like him. I like that he's simplistic but recognizable, and I have written some reasons as to why he is just a cat in the story. So anyway, after the winners were announced, let's just say I wasn't specifically expecting to win, but I had really wanted to work on something. I was kind of hoping I'd hear back from the judges, just some feedback, but again, not super surprised I didn't. But anyway, once those winners were announced, I posted the comic to TikTok and it kind of took off. Now, let's just say my definition of taking off is probably a lot different than others. I definitely didn't become TikTok famous or anything, but I've never had a great time gaining views or much engagement in any social media. TikTok is one of the only places I've had some kind of success. And I'm terrified it's going to go away again. But regardless, it got around 30k views and I finally hit 1,000 followers. And I decided I really did want to make a YouTube channel, even if it took a while to build up the followers once again. So, it's all thanks to Magical Kitty that we made it here. So, moving on from the origins of the original story and the design, I'm going to blabber a bit about what I have planned for the story, what I'm still working on for the story, and a few characters I've been working on. However, I do want to point out that nothing that I state going forward is going to be set in stone. There's a ton of brainstorming I still need to do, as well as world building, and you're just gonna be joining me on the process and seeing where we are right now. One of the biggest things that I've been battling with is whether or not to keep the original plot of the villains taking away nighttime. There's a few reasons for this, which is, there are actually places in the world where it's night for half the year. So it's not completely insane for a place not to have daytime. However, the biggest thing is that I've had a hard time building the villains for the story. I do have a general concept of a day kingdom and night kingdom. And the night kingdom, for whatever reason, deciding that Earth no longer deserves their night, and Gummy and the other magical creatures we'll see shortly are rebels from the Night Kingdom who are trying to bring back night to the world. However, the question comes to, why are they sending monsters to the Earth? Why don't they want to give the Earth their nighttime? If they already decided that the Earth doesn't deserve them, why are they sending these monsters? And who are these girls fighting? If it's not from the Night Kingdom, where are they from? There's so many questions I have. I think it really comes down to I don't have a good motive yet. So until I can figure that out, this plot line for the villains is kind of on the ropes. We don't know where it'll land. So what I'm going to bring you are some designs for the characters that I've written thus far. I don't want to go too deep into their character arcs because, again, they're very much a work in progress. So I'm just going to show you what I have for their designs thus far and a couple things about them and how they might know Magical Kitty. Now, I've always wanted there to be more magical girls, of course, but after doing some thinking and looking back at my old ideas, I did settle on Magical Kitty being the only magical woman that is the only adult magical girl. And the reason behind this is because Gummy chose to be a real cat. The other critters, which I'll give you a sneak peek on shortly, are all mythical animals and look more like plushies, so they can hide in broad daylight, while Gummy is just a cat. And he had approached younger girls before to become magical girls, but found that children would often bring home a cat to their parents, who would freak out and force them to put the cat out again. And then realized that he could not hide with a child because he was a cat. Gummy and the other rebels chose their appearance when they came to Earth. The reason he chose to be a real cat was because he wanted to be loved, and he knew humans loved cats. Since he kept having the same trouble with teenage girls and preteen girls, he decided it was better to find an adult. Someone who could live on their own, someone who didn't have eyes watching them, someone who could make the decision themselves that they would bring home an animal and no parent figure would be fighting them about it. So he did spy on Magical Kitty for a while before choosing her. It wasn't completely random happenstance that she found him in the alley. He kind of set himself up there. So, next I'm going to be showing you a pair of girls. The first one is currently titled just Mothman Girl. Her magical companion, obviously, is a Mothman. And her design is kind of gothic Lolita inspired. These antenna or feathers on the top of her head and these round red glasses to imitate the eyes of the Mothman are the two things most definitely constant in this design. But I haven't really nailed down the rest of her costume design. I know what I want her general body shape to be, and I know I want her to be POC. And I have a personality in mind. She's very spunky and the tougher of the two, and we'll show the other one shortly. I have a couple designs for her Mothman buddy here, but I haven't really nailed it down either. Originally, she was going to be a tanuki. In fact, these three specifically were going to be a tanuki, or raccoon dog design, a kitsune, or a magical fox design, and Magical Kitty was going to be more inspired by a maneki neko, or a lucky cat. However, I dropped this for a couple of reasons. The main reason being that I didn't want this to end up being super Japan inspired. While Magical Girls, of course, do have a lot of heritage in Japan, I did want to write a story that was more true to what I know, what I knew growing up, and putting in Japan where I've only dreamed of going didn't really seem right to me. And then additionally, whenever I tried to design the other two girls, I ended up always making the Tanuki girl look too much like Sayu from Genshin Impact, and the fox look too much like Crunchyroll-chan. I don't know why. She's not even a fox. So after doing some thinking, I decided I kind of wanted to make them creatures that were more common in the folklore that I grew up with versus folklore that I learned from watching anime. So that's how we came around to Mothman Girl. One of the other thoughts I had for her was Jackalope Girl, which I have a very rough sketch for here, but I ended up not wanting to go that way because I didn't feel like it super fit her personality. I also, whenever I think of jackalopes, I don't know, I think of more cowgirl designs, so I didn't feel like it really was what I wanted for her. We might come back to the concept for another girl. Anyway, here's the other magical girl I have designed with her. She has a name. Her name is Winnie, and she is the unicorn maho, as it states up here. I kind of know what I want her to look like, but I did a lot of messing with to figure out exactly how I want her presented. I want a very soft, fluffy design for her dress. I did dabble with the idea of a suit too. She's a pretty thin girl, and she's, of course, paired up with a unicorn. Its exact design I haven't really gotten down either. Unfortunately, I'm really into Honkai Star Rail, and I feel like all of these look too much like Little Ika. So it's still a work in progress to make it more unique. And if you're wondering from her color palette, yeah, she is trans. It does come up in the story, but like I says, I don't want to harp on the character arcs too much, which are still in the progress. She is the more withdrawn of the two characters. Her friend Mothman Girl is kind of a hothead, but stands up for her a lot. So they're basically inseparable. They end up meeting Magical Kitty as her normal self in an arts and craft class they end up going to. While they don't exactly team up, Magical Kitty does give them her phone number to ping her if they ever need help. And it really introduces this dilemma to Magical Kitty, who is upset that children are expected to fight monsters. But she was also upset that an adult was being forced to be a magical girl. And this is one of the many moral dilemmas that Magical Kitty faces throughout the story. I want to show you one more character I have designs for today. This is Stella. Now Stella, I don't have a full page of designs for because it is not my first time drawing her. I really wish I could find all my sketches of her when I was still coming up with her design, but unfortunately, I drew them when I was working years ago, and there's a good chance most of them didn't even make it home with me. I looked through my phone around the time that I think I drew them, but I didn't see any pictures either, so unfortunately, they're probably just gone. But I designed her for a totally different story. Still, I really like her. I like her galaxy-styled hair, and I love her sweet heart-shaped face. She's a character who loves love, and in this story specifically, she loves magical girls, just like Magical Kitty. She doesn't know that her friend is a magical girl, but they became friends over their shared love for the genre before Magical Kitty becomes a magical girl. Stella is also a teacher/guidance counselor at the school that Winnie and the Mothman girl attend, and she is kind of a rock for them whenever there's trouble that can be explained away without making it clear that they are magical girls. She's really someone that everyone can rely on. And that's all I really have right now. I apologize if you were hoping for more news on the comic or how I plan to post it online. A lot of that's going to take place a while from now. I really love designing characters, and I don't love writing the story so much, but I just have to take time to brainstorm it. Anyway, it's June now, so it's Pride. I'll be posting some Pride stuff this month. I'll let you know if there's anything that truly develops on Magical Kitty, but I also may remain quiet until I have some good big news to share. If you watched this far, thank you so much for coming to my channel and watching the video. If you enjoyed it and you like my art, don't forget to subscribe. You may have also noticed that this is a little later than my other videos. I am experimenting with days on which I post, so they may move around mid-weeks until I find a day I'm most comfortable with. And if you're still here, if you would like to suggest a LGBT couple for me to draw for this here challenge, feel free to drop them in the comments. I have about 3 right now, and I'd like at least 6, but I'll draw more if I get even more than that. I don't think I'll post this next week since I'll still be working on those, but probably the week after. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye!